And the first tip, and it's the biggest one, is third point. You guys are really weak in this area. The fifth thing that you can do to help Unmounted Lessons be super successful in your program is, let's talk about unmounted lessons. Instructors either love them or hate them, or they want to love them, but they are just not sure how to get the buy-in of their students and the families, and maybe even some of the powers that be, like other staff or board members at their program, to buy in on the importance of consistently having unmounted lessons in regular lessons, and also as a backup when you might have to cancel mounted lessons due to a horse being out or weather or whatever it might be. By the end of our time together in this presentation, I'm really hoping that I can convince you to love unmounted lessons and also give you tools to successfully incorporate them into your program so that it helps you build a successful, sustainable, and horsemanship-based lesson format that helps accelerate your students' progress and also enhance what they're getting out of every single time that they're out at the barn with you or other instructors. My name is Saber Popoli. I'm the owner and founder of Hoof Falls and Footfalls, and I specialize in instructor education, and specifically instructors who work with students who might have different physical, cognitive, and emotional abilities. And we work with those students through adaptive, or also called therapeutic, horseback riding lessons and equine assisted learning. And part of that, even though we call it adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding lessons, it's really adaptive equine activities. So it's not just riding, but also unmounted lessons. And I am a huge, huge advocate and believer in the power of unmounted lessons. And I strongly recommend and hope that all instructors frequently incorporate unmounted lessons into your program, and that you don't get stuck in the trap of thinking that riding is the only option and people won't want to come to your lesson program if you don't offer riding only and you make them do unmounted lessons. Little spoiler, I make my students do lessons, and that's a non-negotiable in my program. And I'll tell you why that's so important and how that will actually set you apart from others and make you have more success in the long run, both with your students' progress and also financially. This question, or this topic of unmounted lessons and how do you get the buy-in of your students, and when I offer an unmounted lesson instead of riding, the families cancel anyways, and then so I might as well just cancel. This is a topic and a question that comes up a lot with instructors. So that's why I wanted to record this and get this out to you guys to hopefully help you, because I have personally been there in my 15 plus years in this industry of struggling to try to get people to buy in on the importance of these, and also understand that even if they don't think they want to attend unmounted lessons at first, because they actually learn to enjoy them and see the value of them later, that it is just part of what we do at the barn. So the tips and the tools and the things that we're going to be talking about are going to seem pretty simple, but fair warning, even though they're simple, it's the actual implementation and follow through that can be hard at first. But then once you actually do it, it is so easy. So even though it might be difficult, I'm gonna challenge you guys to really take a deep look at unmounted lessons and how it can be better incorporated into your programs so that you are getting both financial success and student success out of this untapped resource. And for those of you that do already really reinforce the power of unmounted lessons in your program, comment below on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, and let me know what your experience is like when it comes to making unmounted lessons a part of your traditional or adaptive and therapeutic programs. So the first thing that we are going to talk about, and the first tip, and it's the biggest one, is mindset. And the reason why this is absolute number one is because it is the mindset of you and your barn or your program, whatever you call it. This is the make or break. So if you as the instructor are not all in and fully invested and understand the value of unmounted lessons, and you're kind of like on the edge of, I kind of want to offer those unmounted lessons, but nobody's going to take it. And I don't know, they're going to cancel anyways. If you don't believe it, your students and their families are not going to believe it either. So mindset is the first one. And if you don't believe it or you don't really think it's important, then just stop watching now, because it's going to be a waste of your time, because this content is for people who are wanting to believe in the power of unmounted lessons and know the importance, but you just don't maybe know how to get that across to the students and the families that you're working with. So mindset is the first. And if you're on the fence about whether or not they're important or not, then keep listening. But if you've already made up your mind that it's not worth it, I don't believe in them, and I just want to do riding because it's easier, whatever your reason is, then not for you. But mindset is number one. So before we even go into the other points, you have got to have that mindset that you fully believe in the value of the unmounted lessons, whether it's just unmounted lessons in general, and every 2, 3, 4, or every single lesson your students are doing groundwork, that's just what you're going to do, or it's always your backup option if classes are canceled because a horse is out or weather's out, or maybe a rider goes over the weight limit for the horse that they are assigned to, or you don't have a saddle that fits that rider anymore, whatever it might be. You have got to have that buy-in, because that's going to then set you up to be able to successfully implement these other simple pieces that I'm going to be talking to you about here. So once we have our mindset made up and we've decided that unmounted lessons are important and that they are going to happen, the second thing that's going to result from the mindset is that you need to create a barn culture that believes in and prioritizes unmounted lessons. So what I mean by that is when people come to enroll into my program, and I offer both traditional lessons and I offer adaptive or therapeutic and also equine assisted learning. It's kind of rolled into everything because that's just how I teach. But the barn culture is that if I have a family coming in and they only want riding and they do not believe in my traditional, more academy style lesson format of all riders who are physically, cognitively, and emotionally able to do some type of unmounted work are required to do so, then I'm not a fit for them. My program format is just not a good fit, and that's okay. But my culture here at my barn, and the culture I hope you guys adopt and incorporate on a regular basis, is that you value the power of unmounted lessons, whether that's leading horses through patterns, you're learning parts of the horse and horsemanship, tack cleaning, temperature pulse respiration, how to lunge, how to feed, whatever it is. There's so much stuff that we can learn on the ground, and it directly benefits our students when they're riding and also in everyday life, because I almost think that unmounted lessons provide more opportunities for us to pass on super important life skills to our students and create a thinking student and, problem solving and really confident student on the ground. And also then that flows into when they're riding in the saddle as well. So this barn culture has to be established from meeting number one, day zero, ground zero, whatever you want to call it. And then you have to not be afraid to say that you're not a good fit, because in reality, you aren't a good fit for every single person who's going to walk in and ask you to enroll them into your lesson program. And that is okay. There's a program out there for everybody. So barn culture is number two, and that directly flows from the mindset. Because again, if you are not fully bought in, you are going to have a hard time consistently pointing out why our barn culture prioritizes unmounted lessons for all abilities of riders or all abilities of students that participate in what we do here. Third point builds off of our mindset and our barn culture. So our third point, and this is where I see a lot of lesson programs. You guys are really weak in this area. I used to be really weak in this area. I've done a bunch of overhauls at both a larger program with over 120, 130 students a week in various equine assisted services, and also in my own personal program when I started up my inclusive program that is traditional and adaptive. And on a smaller scale, I thought I could go more lax on the policies, and I regressed and I didn't learn from my previous lessons and mistakes. And so policies are going to be what set you up for success. So you want your policies to support your barn culture and your mindset for unmounted lessons. And what I mean by having policies in place, and I did a whole nother long video on my credit and cancellation and makeup lesson policies. If you want more in-depth information about those, it is on my YouTube and podcast channel. So make sure you check that out. But you need to create a set of policies that makes unmounted lessons a non-negotiable and part of your barn culture, because you have the mindset that unmounted lessons are important. So for example, my policies are that my students pay up front for the month, and that their payment is holding their place in my lesson program, whether or not they actually attend that lesson. And if I have to cancel a riding portion of the lesson due to a horse being out or weather or whatever it is, like I've mentioned several times, my policy is that our alternative option is that I will give an unmounted lesson I will give an unmounted lesson for that day. See, and I don't even want to use that word option in there because they think it's optional. If the parents and the students think, oh no, I don't want to attend it because it's only in mounted today, then too bad. They're still going to pay for that lesson because they are paying for a part in my program or a spot in my program. And then also, if that's a chronic problem, we're going to reassess whether or not my program and this barn culture is a good fit for them, or if they maybe need to go try a different program somewhere else, which might be totally okay. So my policies reinforce how important unmounted lessons are. And also my policy of having every student who is able to participate in mounted and unmounted portions of that lesson, and that it's instructor reservation to offer a shorter lesson time frame due to maybe a very short attention span or limited physical ability of that student, which I have a couple. But most of my students come out here for an hour, and everybody does grooming and tacking, and then we ride if that's part of that lesson that day, and then they're responsible for putting their stuff away for that day. So it's an academy, it's a holistic approach to lessons. But my policies set me up for success. They're already on paper from meeting number 1 and even phone call number 1. I'm reinforcing these policies that I have down because I'm a softie. I hate saying, no, I'm not going to give you a credit for that or whatever it is. But if I have it written down, all it is, hey, thank you for letting me know you're going to be out today. Here's my policy, just as a reminder. And it's not a struggle. And once you consistently implement these policies across the board, there might be a little bump in the road as everybody kind of gets used to it, especially existing students. But once you make it part of your culture up front coming in, and they understand that that's just how you function, all of your new students are just going to understand that that's how it is. And I even now have families tell me, hey, we're not going to be here because we're on vacation this week or whatever it is. We know it's your policy that we don't get a credit or a makeup, but we wanted to let you know, and we'll see you next week. So they then understand the expectations and the policies that impact them as a family. So number 4, when we do incorporate unmounted lessons and we understand the value of them, we want to consistently find ways to relate it to riding and life skills. I'm just going to put LS for short. And this, of course, is riding if that student rides. If they don't ride, so for example, a student maybe is over the weight limit for the horses that you currently have. Maybe that student has developed a contraindication that makes it unsafe for them to do mounted lessons, or a piece of tack broke or the saddle broke and you haven't had time to invest in that. So we're going to shift to unmounted lessons, whatever it is. And for whatever reason that they're doing unmounted lessons, to help with the buy-in and help these students and their families, again, understand the value of these unmounted lessons, is the more that we can relate it to riding, if that student rides, and everybody, life skills, you are going to get buy-in. And it's really cool when you run a really good unmounted lesson, either a portion of your lesson or just a full lesson that day, and you have a student say, oh my gosh, I wish we did this more. And in your mind, probably in the back of your head, you're thinking, yeah, they're here mostly for riding. And you might feel a little guilty about offering a fully unmounted lesson instead. But I guarantee you, if you teach it well and it's engaging and you're challenging those students and you're really tying in how leading relates to riding and body language and our life skills and our critical thinking and making them really use their brains and their body, they are going to absolutely enjoy it. I think the students can relate even better to the horses when they're on the ground with them versus in the saddle. So unmounted work is so important. And if we're consistently verbalizing when we're teaching how it relates to riding and what skills they're working on, and how it then might, translate into them being able to put a snap on their dog leash onto their dog collar and take their dog for a walk. Or we can plan ahead and look ahead and think about spacing when we're leading, and then, spacing as we're walking next to friends in school and not bumping them in. If we're good about verbalizing that in the lessons, our students are going to hear that. And if parents or caregivers are kind of sitting close by listening, they're also going to hear it as well. So relating it to writing and life skills is super, super important. The fifth thing that you can do to help unmounted lessons be super successful in your program is, and I was kind of saying it in this one, is it comes down to your teaching. You need to have strong, solid teaching techniques and skills. It needs to be super dynamic, and it needs to be challenging and appropriate to that student. So you could have the best lesson plan planned out of, we're going to do temperature, pulse, and respiration, and we're going to learn how to chart it and do some math. But if you present that in a way that is boring, doesn't involve the students, you talk too much, there's no question and answer as appropriate to that student, you're going to lose them. So what makes a good lesson is not the lesson plan. It is the instructor that delivers that lesson plan. So you need to be watching their YouTube videos, go take lessons. Like, you guys have so much access now. Well, you guys, I do too, to all of this wonderful stuff online through YouTube, through memberships, all of that, or even just go reach out to a local trainer and say, hey, can I just come shadow for a day and just watch and learn and watch what they do during unmounted times? And that could just be working with the horses directly one-on-one, or maybe you're watching them teach unmounted lessons to other students in a more traditional format. So teaching is a huge piece of actually having successful unmounted lessons in your program. And that should also be kind of a no-brainer too, that your riding lessons, if you don't have good teaching, no matter how cool the arena setup is, how cool the lesson plan is, how fun you think it's going to be, if you're using that arena layout and your lesson plan as a crutch for poor teaching or weak teaching, then unmounted lessons, and probably if we really take a close look at it, your mounted lessons are going to struggle long term because we're missing this important piece of the dynamic teaching. The last thing, our sixth point here, is we want to keep our unmounted lessons simple. Or that acronym, right? Just keep it simple, silly. I'll go the nice one. So unmounted lessons, I can't tell you how many times and how many conversations, even directly, but how many times I've seen it on social media where instructors are asking for ideas, which one is great. I don't want to say don't ask for help on social media platforms, but they come in asking like, oh my gosh, we can't ride today, or I have a group of kids coming out that are a homeschool group and we're only doing unmounted. What do I do? And they think that it has to be something super complicated and super involved and lots of pieces because we're not riding. So you're banking on that complicated topic or pieces or part of that lesson program to make it interesting, when really it goes back to that teaching. So just like in riding, our unmounted lessons should have a new thing that we're working on, or maybe something we've worked on in the past, but we're now building on it and we're getting better and deeper understanding of it. And we only need a little tidbit because we're teaching it to someone where it's new to them. So even though we might halter and lead horses hundreds of times in a month, maybe even in a week, depending on how many horses you have and how often you're getting them out, but that might be something that we experience every day that we think is easy and boring, and it's not going to be much challenge for our students, but really it's going to be. So don't let unmounted lessons fool you into thinking that you need to do more just to keep it interesting. For example, haltering and leading, haltering on its own could be a full half hour to an hour lesson. If you work on managing your equipment and practice haltering on a fence first, and then how do we approach the horse and put the halter on, and then how do we put our equipment back, and what happens if we have a different style of halter. So that could totally be a lesson all on its own, but usually we don't stick to one thing. We might then incorporate leading. So then you just progress through haltering and leading. Temperature, pulse, and respiration, a lot of times people teach those in one go. Each of those, temperature, pulse, and respiration could be its own little unit or its own class. So we could take temperature on different horses throughout the barn. We get multiple reps. We can see the different measurements of each horse, compare and contrast. We could then even go lead the horses around and then take their temperature again and see if it changes. And had I tried to shove all three in there, temperature, pulse, and respiration, we could have missed out on some really cool opportunities to just understand temperature and it not be an overwhelming information dump on our students if we try to just shove too much in, because again, we have the wrong mindset of, oh, unmounted lessons are boring, and so therefore I have to get all crazy with them. So this, again, the keep it simple ties to good teaching, because good solid teaching takes little tidbits and layers them in and circles back throughout a whole lesson, and you don't overwhelm your students, and you keep that learning within what we call the zone of proximal development. And if you want to learn how that applies to horseback riding and specifically adaptive or therapeutic riding and adaptive or therapeutic horsemanship, go ahead and check out the Intuitive Instructor Club, because I have in-depth videos on there about zone of proximal development and tons of videos on teaching theory and technique. So keeping it simple and making your students think and creating lesson content that's going to challenge them and create critical thinking and life skills, and then tie it to riding, that all relates together. So unmounted lessons, again, making it part of your program. Once you do it, if you actually decide to do it and you have the culture of your barn where we value unmounted lessons and you have the policies to back it up, and then you tie the unmounted lessons into the other type of lessons you have, riding, if your students do come out for riding, and you have good solid teaching that lets your students learn about those unmounted topics, and you keep it simple and you don't try to jumble in way too much information, this is this recipe for success of having unmounted lessons be a part of your program. And this can be a huge revenue maker for your programs, because you're not having to cancel lessons or issue a refund or try to scramble and do makeups if you're unable to offer a riding option. And offering unmounted lessons and knowing they're important and knowing the importance of life skills and having good teaching and keeping it simple so you have lots of different things to teach throughout the time, this could even open up a whole new population of potential students for you to teach if they come out just for unmounted lessons. So unmounted lessons are something I think as a lesson program, traditional or adaptive and therapeutic, I think it's an essential piece in that we're really doing our students and our horses and ourselves an injustice when we don't prioritize these and don't make them part of our culture and just make it part of who we are. And again, like I mentioned before, I have experienced the mindset and the challenges and how do I get everybody on board with this of incorporating unmounted lessons when they weren't a part of it. And I can tell you now that I consistently do it because of this recipe for success, I'm not going back. And if you guys have ever worked with me through a consult or any of the chats that we've done, like a live networking chat before, or you've had me out for a clinic, I highly, highly promote that programs incorporate unmounted lessons because they are so, so important. So please let me know what you think about unmounted lessons. Do you guys prioritize them? Are you wanting to prioritize them, but you just really haven't taken that jump into it? How does it work for your program? And then also make sure that you put in the comments below whether wherever you are watching or listening to this information, if you have any other questions that relate to adaptive or therapeutic riding or horsemanship or teaching theory and methodology or disabilities that we might be working with in adaptive or therapeutic riding, because questions and topics like this come directly from instructors like you. And I really want to build a resource that is continually growing and giving you guys important information and helpful information that is going to help educate, equip, and hopefully encourage you guys to be the best instructor that you can be so that you can safely and professionally serve all ability of students that you're working with. And educating, equipping, and encouraging is the goal of Hoof Falls and Footfalls. That's my mission. So Thank you for listening in on this. I look forward to seeing your guys' comments and feedback and where you guys are at on your love-hate relationship with unmounted lessons and what you guys do. And I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next piece of content that I put out through Hoof Falls and Footfalls.